The transmission reached Earth on a frequency long since abandoned, buried beneath layers of bureaucratic protocol and static interference. Somewhere, deep in the orbital network's fail-safes, a blinking red alert was triggered. The message was simple. A call for help. Coordinates attached, language translated, no sender ID. It should have been ignored. But Earth had changed. They didn't send diplomats. They sent agents. Agent Cade was bred in gravity twice what the average Terran could endure. Born in the Terran wastes, raised under iron skies and war drills, he was fluent in 23 alien dialects and had survived first contact with the Greshik Hive Lords. Cade wasn't called when peace was needed. He was called when the message didn't make sense, or when the people behind it didn't deserve peace. As the dropship pierced the atmosphere of Sector 41 AJ, Cade reviewed the logs again. No distress beacon history, no known colonies. A ghost system. The message, "Help us, Earth, we beg you," was recorded less than a week ago. Desperation clung to the transmission like blood to a blade. The landing was rough. His boots sank into the dark, sponge-like soil of a forest that hummed with unnatural life. Trees taller than skyscrapers twisted into the clouds, and the air stank of rot and electricity. Waiting at the edge of the clearing was something humanoid. Thin. Pale. Eyes like dim stars. "We sent the call," it said, voice trembling. You came." Cade said nothing. He looked past the figure. Movement in the trees, hidden eyes. He scanned the area, heat signatures everywhere. "You didn't mention an ambush?" he said coldly. No ambush. Please, we're all that's left." The figure, male, bivocal tone and bone structure, lowered itself to its knees. "They came. The Rajak. Slaughtered us. We had no weapons, no warning. We're not fighters. We only knew Earth would protect its own." Cade raised a brow. "Its own? You sent settlers here. Decades ago. They were forgotten. We are their descendants. Please. Earth is still home." Cade's face remained unreadable, but inside, the knots of suspicion tightened. The Deathworlder creed was simple. Loyalty through struggle, honor through blood, redemption through fire. If these people had fled instead of fighting, if they had begged instead of built, then they were not Earth's kind. He tapped his comm. "Preliminary contact made. Survivors claim Terran ancestry. No hostile action yet." The reply was static at first, then a voice. "Protocol Red remains active. Verify loyalty." Cade looked down at the kneeling figure. "What's your name?" The man hesitated. "Davin. My name is Davin." "Then Davin." Cade's tone dropped like a blade. "Show me where the others are. Every one of them." Davin stood slowly, warily. "You'll help us, then?" "We'll see," Cade replied, voice devoid of comfort. The forest was a graveyard. Burnt-out shelters, shallow mass graves, and the smell of old death guided them to a crumbling central compound. About 60 survivors huddled inside, weak and wide-eyed, half of them children. Malnourished, beaten down, but alive. Davin looked at Cade, pleading. "We've done everything to survive. We just want to go home." Cade nodded once, then tapped his comm again. 60 total. No visible weapons. Civilian-level organization. There was a long pause. Then Earth's command responded with one line. They ran. You know what that means. Cade's jaw tensed. He stared at the children. The mothers, the hollow-eyed men. Davin must have sensed it. "Wait, what does that mean? What are you—" "They called the wrong Earth," Cade said quietly. "Mercy died with the old world." Then he reached for his rifle. Davin didn't run. He stood there, his breath caught in his throat, frozen by something more paralyzing than fear. realization. Cade's eyes didn't carry hate. They didn't carry pity either. They were dead, silent, judging. "You're here to kill us?" Davin's voice was hoarse, but his legs didn't move. "You think we're cowards?" Cade didn't respond. His rifle hung at his side, not raised yet, but the tension in his body had shifted. This wasn't a man bracing for negotiation. This was someone trying to convince himself not to kill out of habit. The comm on his chest clicked again. "Confirmation, Agent Cade. Execute red directive. No deviations." He turned the volume down. "Let them wait." "What happened when the Razak came?" Cade asked, voice sharp, as if the answer might decide whether Davin lived another minute. Davin blinked, surprised. "We fought, at first, but they outnumbered us. They had aerial drones, energy weapons, everything. We had farm tools and handguns that hadn't been serviced in decades. The first wave took out half the colony. The rest, we just ran, hid." Cade stared. "Deathworlders don't hide." Davin's jaw tightened. "We're not Deathworlders, not anymore. The ones who came here, they wanted peace, to raise families, to grow something that didn't involve bullets. That peace made you soft. Maybe. But you tell me, should we have stood and died, made graves of our children just to satisfy Earth's pride?" Silence. Cade didn't answer because he didn't need to. The answer was yes. Davin exhaled slowly, stepping closer. "You didn't come here to help. You came here to judge." "I came here to enforce doctrine." "That doctrine is madness." Cade's grip on the rifle tightened just enough to be noticed. The colony was quiet. Too quiet. The survivors were still inside the compound, probably listening, possibly armed. Maybe not with guns, but desperation sharpened bones into weapons. He had to tread carefully. "You're not the first to call us," Cade said quietly, "and you won't be the first we've silenced." Davin's eyes widened. "You've done this before?" "Dozens of times. Deathworlders sent to reclaim the weak links. It's not about punishment. It's about legacy. If the galaxy thinks we let cowards live, they'll start seeing us as equals. We're not. We're worse." "Worse?" Davin asked, voice rising. "You think that makes you superior?" "It makes us remembered." Davin shook his head. "That's not strength. That's rot. Earth's building an empire on ashes. Empires don't care what they're built on, only that they last." A small movement to the right. Cade caught it instantly. A child, young, maybe 7 or 8, was peeking around a broken support beam. Dirty face, hollow cheeks. He was clutching a ragged piece of cloth like it was a shield. "You kill us," Davin said, "and Earth wins nothing. We're not soldiers. We're not a threat. We're a mistake your ancestors made and forgot about. Let us fade. Or maybe help us rebuild, just once." Cade turned slightly toward the child, then back to Davin. "No," he said. "That's not how this ends." He raised the rifle, but not to fire. He held it at chest level, eyes locked on Davin's. And then he lowered it. Cade tapped his comm again. "This is Agent Cade. Red directive terminated, sending full report. These people are no threat. Mark Sector 41 AJ for non-contact zone. Repeat, non-contact." The response was immediate. "You're not authorized to terminate red directive. Final warning, Cade." "I just did." Over and out. He ripped the comm unit from his chest and crushed it underfoot. Davin stared at him, stunned. "You'll be hunted for this." "I know." "Why?" Cade looked up at the towering trees, the sky bleeding amber through the clouds. "Because someone has to be the first to stop the madness. Might as well be the bastard who is part of it." Davin didn't know whether to hug him or keep his distance. Cade took a step back. "I'll stay for a few days, show you how to fix your generators, harden your defenses. Then I'm gone." "And then?" Davin asked, his voice tentative. "Then you disappear, for good. Change names, Move deeper into the system. If Earth finds you again, I won't be there to stop them." A silence stretched between them, one filled with quiet gratitude and something else. Respect. By nightfall, Cade had begun rerouting the power lines. The children gathered nearby, watching him with curiosity and fear. He said nothing to them, didn't smile, didn't wave. But he didn't drive them away either. He worked like a man with no future, because in many ways, he wasn't supposed to have one. The next day, 3 drones appeared in orbit. Cade spotted them before the colony did. Earth's message was clear. He activated his personal beacon, the one no Deathworlder was supposed to use unless mortally wounded. It sent one signal: deceased. Within minutes, the drones retreated. Davin approached, staring at the sky. "What did you do?" "Made sure no one comes looking for me, or you." "But you're alive." "Not officially." Davin was silent a long time before asking, "Were you always like this?" "A killer?" Cade didn't look at him. "We all start out as sons. Then Earth turns us into weapons. You could come with us. Leave Earth behind." "I am Earth, Davin. The worst part of it. But maybe, if I stay here long enough, something softer grows where all the killing used to be." Davin nodded slowly. A scream interrupted the moment. They ran. Toward the edge of the forest, one of the colony's scouts was dragging someone, through the brush. Blood. Crushed limbs. Another survivor, half dead. "They're back!" he cried. "The Razak! They're coming!" Cade's blood chilled. "How far?" "Hours, maybe less. They've been tracking us since the attack. We never shook them." Davin turned to Cade. "You said you'd help harden our defenses. I said I'd help rebuild, not fight your war. Then don't fight for us. Fight with us." For a long moment, Cade said nothing. Then he went to the central hub, opened his drop capsule, pulled out a small black case labeled Containment Breach, Tier 3, Forbidden Use. Inside were 2 weapons, one for him, one for Davin. "You ever shoot a particle arc?" "No." "You'll learn." By the time the Razak arrived, the Deathworlder wasn't just training them. He was leading them. They weren't soldiers, not yet. But fear had given way to fury. Cade had taught them how to turn grief into armor, shame into bullets. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were the ghosts of Earth's past, and they were about to make the Razak regret ever answering that SOS. The first sound wasn't what they expected. It wasn't a roar or blast, but a shriek. Metallic, high-pitched, unnatural. The kind that crawled down your spine and told you your bones weren't strong enough to survive what was coming. Cade didn't flinch. He stood at the top of the central barricade, eye on the distant tree line through a battered rangefinder. "They've got stalkers out front, 3-legged recon drones, scouting for blind spots." Davin was beside him, arc rifle gripped in both hands. He hadn't slept. No one had. But his eyes had changed. They no longer looked like a man waiting to die. They looked like a man ready to kill for the right to live. "Where do we hit them first?" Davin asked. "We don't." Cade didn't blink. "They hit us. Then we bleed them dry." Around them, the compound had transformed. Barricades made from stripped-down vehicles, crude but effective traps using sharpened scrap metal. A trench system that Cade insisted would force the bastards to play close. They couldn't out-tech the Razak, but they could out-madness them. Inside, the children were moved to the far bunkers. Mothers, now militia, carried rifles as if they'd been born with them. Some of the older men had panic in their fingers but defiance in their jaws. Cade had infected them with something they hadn't felt in decades. Anger with purpose. Another shriek tore through the forest. Then silence. Cade felt the moment like a sixth sense. "They're here!" The tree line exploded with movement. razor-thin drones streaked across the clearing, not shooting, scanning. "Don't fire yet," Cade muttered. Davin tensed. "Why not?" "They're right. Because that's what they want." A heartbeat later, Cade was proven right. Behind the drones came the real storm. 10-foot-tall Razak enforcers, armored in bone-like plating, wielding plasma glaives that turned trees into slag. And something else, something new. Cade's jaw clenched. Juggernauts. I thought those were extinct. What the hell's a juggernaut? A walking war crime. Biomechanical tanks. Can't be reasoned with. Barely feel pain. You kill one by either burying it or taking out the pilot's spine through the back of the neck, if they have one. Davin went pale. "And how many are there?" "3. That we can see." From behind the barricade, the colonists waited, breathing through clenched teeth and the kind of prayers that didn't sound like they believed in God anymore. Cade lifted his rifle. Now. The opening volley wasn't clean. It wasn't tactical. It was desperate. The colonists fired like people who knew this was their only shot. But the traps did their job. One of the drones hit a tripwire and detonated in mid-air. Another sliced itself on razor wire laced with engine coolant. The enforcers slowed, confused, as if not used to resistance. Then Cade stepped forward. He didn't fire right away. He ran, straight into the open, arc rifle spinning up with a deep, thunderous hum. One of the enforcers turned, adjusting its trajectory to strike. Cade dove low, then released a pulse so violent it split the creature down the middle. Steam poured out of the body as it dropped. The colonists roared. Davin felt something burst in his chest. Not fear, not adrenaline. Pride. He followed, charging behind Cade, leading a squad of 10 colonists. They weren't trained, but they had rage. They fired, ducked, moved like wolves hunting a larger predator, and they hit hard. 2 more enforcers went down. Then the juggernauts arrived. Cade shouted over the gunfire, "Fall back! Focus fire on the joints. Knees first, then the base of the spine." One colonist didn't make it. The juggernaut grabbed him mid-run and crushed his ribcage like wet paper. Davin saw it, screamed, fired blindly until Cade pulled him back. "You think screaming makes it hurt less?" Cade barked. "Pick your targets and shut up." But Davin wasn't shutting up. "They killed him, crushed him like nothing. He had a kid." "They all do. That's why we win." Cade jumped the trench and rolled under the juggernaut's swipe. He pulled a high-velocity spike from his belt and jammed it into the machine's knee joint. A microsecond later, the detonation dropped the massive beast to one leg. Then Davin understood. It wasn't about killing them all. It was about breaking their rhythm. Davin joined the others, flanking the injured juggernaut. They fired at the spine. Sparks flew. Then, finally, a crack. A screech from the machine, and the pilot inside. It toppled. Davin fell to his knees, panting. "We got one," he whispered. Cade helped him up. "Then let's get 2 more." The battle raged for an hour. Colonists died. Some quickly, some slowly. But they didn't run. Not once. The Rajak tried everything. Overhead sweeps, plasma bursts, sonic disorientation, but Cade had planned for every move. Smoke grenades flooded the clearing, mirrors blinded drone optics, fire traps funneled them into kill zones. When the final juggernaut fell, its spine cut clean by Davin's trembling hands, the field was littered with corpses, both alien and human. And still, they stood. Cade limped through the smoldering trench, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. Davin met him halfway. "We did it." Cade didn't smile. He just nodded. "Today." A colonist, an older woman with soot-covered hands, approached. "They'll come back, won't they?" "Yes," Cade said. "They always do." "But we'll be ready next time," Davin added. Cade looked at him. There was no pride in his face, only exhaustion. You're Deathworlders now. No, Davin replied quietly. We're better, because we chose to be. That night, they burned the enemy bodies, not out of respect, out of warning. Smoke climbed high into the stars, and somewhere, orbiting silently above them, Earth's long-range satellites watched the flames. There would be questions. There would be consequences. But for now, they were free. Cade hadn't slept in 40 hours. His wounds weren't the problem. The cuts, burns, and bruises healed faster than they should have, thanks to nanomed patches. It was the silence that gnawed at him. That post-battle quiet where nothing moved, not even guilt. Just space to think. He stood at the edge of the colony, watching the smoke trails still rising from the battlefield. The wind carried ash and memory. 53 dead. 11 of them children, and still, by Deathworlder standards, it was a win. Davin approached slowly, holding 2 mugs of bitterroot brew. He handed one to Cade without speaking. They stared into the forest together. They haven't sent more, Davin finally said. They will, Cade answered. Not Razak. Earth Davin flinched. You think they know? They always know. We trained our satellites to monitor pulse weapon signatures from orbit. Every Deathworlder-level energy spike gets logged and reviewed. And if someone sees what happened here? They already have. Davin took a long sip. What happens to you now? Cade's jaw clenched. I'm already dead on paper. That buys us time. But they'll send someone eventually, not to recover me, to erase the mistake. Davin looked at him sideways. What mistake? Cade didn't answer. He didn't need to. He was the mistake. 3 days later, the colony had changed again. They weren't rebuilding anymore. They were fortifying. The barricades had become walls. Makeshift watchtowers rose from scrap and trees. Patrol routes were drawn. Training rotations scheduled. The children learned basic first aid and how to spot airborne drones. Cade moved among them like a ghost, fixing things, correcting stances, never staying in one spot long. He didn't speak unless he had to. Davin finally confronted him near the west watchtower. You're trying to disappear. Cade didn't turn around. I already have. No, I mean from them, these people. You're pulling back. Cade finally turned. I taught them what they need. Now they have to make it their own. They want to follow you. They shouldn't. Why not? Cade's voice lowered. Because I'm not done killing. And if they follow me, they'll end up buried under the same mountain of corpses I've spent my life climbing. Davin shook his head. Maybe they don't want a clean Messiah. Maybe they need a dirty one. Cade said nothing, but his eyes softened. Just a crack. That night, Earth made its move. A drone descended without warning, low and fast, breaking the upper atmosphere like a thunderclap. It didn't land. It hovered, projecting a holoscreen 10 meters high. Cade stood in the center of the compound as the image crackled to life. A woman's face, cold, sharp, surgically perfected. Military insignia stamped across her collar. Voice like razors. Agent Cade, this is High Marshal Tress of Earth Defense Command. You are in violation of the Deathworlder Restoration Protocol. You have terminated a red directive without clearance. Explain. Cade said nothing. Tress's face narrowed. Explain, or be marked as hostile. Cade raised his voice. There was nothing to restore, just ghosts, people we abandoned, people we tried to forget. And when they called for help, you sent me to silence them. Protocol dictates. Protocol isn't law. It's fear in disguise. We act like the galaxy will eat us alive if we show weakness. But what makes us strong isn't the killing. It's what we do when we put the rifle down and choose not to shoot. You are compromised. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally human again. This is your final warning. Surrender, or you and the colony will be marked for orbital purification. Davin stepped forward. You purify us, and you'll have every frontier colony questioning their loyalty. Tress stared at him. Who are you? Someone who survived. Someone who fought back because he was shown how. If Earth still has any soul left, they'll see this wasn't betrayal. It was redemption. Tress didn't reply. The screen flickered once, then vanished. The drone rose, disappeared into the clouds. Silence fell again. What does that mean? Someone whispered. Cade turned to the crowd. It means they're scared, and that gives us time. But time, as always, ran out too fast. A week later, the horizon cracked with light. Not a drone this time, a full-scale transport ship, marked with Earth's insignia, massive, heavily armed, descending like a god's hammer. Cade's face darkened. She sent them. Davin looked pale. What do we do? Cade tightened his belt. We survive, and if that fails, we make them bleed for every step they take. The colonists stood ready at the walls, but fear trembled through them again. This wasn't the Razak. This was Earth, their creators, their judges, their executioners. The ship landed outside the perimeter. A ramp lowered. Dozens of soldiers marched out. Deathworlders in full armor, faces masked, eyes unreadable. Then came the lead officer. Not a clone, not a drone, another Cade, younger, cleaner, sharper. He approached alone, rifle slung. Cade 014, he said. Cade nodded. 012. You broke directive. I chose life. You abandoned your mission. Number Y changed it. The younger Cade looked at the colonists, then back. They don't deserve it. Neither did we once. A long silence. Then the younger Cade said, She gave us orders. She gave me orders once, too. Then I started thinking. You think we should let them live? I think it's time Earth learned to forgive. Another pause, another second. Then 014 reached for his comm. Hi, Marshal, this is 014. Local asset neutralized. Sector 41. AJ no longer viable for enforcement, suggesting reclassification to Black Zone quarantine. Recommend non-interference. Static, then silence. He tossed the comm to Cade. You're lucky I believe you. Cade raised a brow. And if you didn't? I'd still be burying bodies tomorrow. 014 turned, walked back toward the ship. The soldiers followed. No shots fired, no words exchanged. The ship rose, vanished. The colony remained, still standing. Cade stood at the edge again that night. Davin joined him. What now? Davin asked. Cade exhaled. Now we live. Quietly, out of sight. And if they come again? They won't. Not for a while. Maybe not ever. Because they're scared? Because they know that they created something they couldn't control. And now, finally, maybe, they're beginning to regret it? Peace, it turned out, was a different kind of battlefield. There were no screaming Razak, no orbital threats, no cold military orders whispered through a comlink. But there were cracks, silent, spreading, splitting minds and relationships under the pressure of healing. Cade walked the perimeter each morning, boots crunching over hardened soil, rifle still slung across his back. He didn't need it. Not anymore. But he carried it anyway. Not as a weapon, as a memory. Every time he passed a child, they paused. Not out of fear, but reverence. They whispered behind his back. The ghost soldier. The one who defied Earth. The Deathworlder who stayed. He hated every name. The colonists had started building again. Real homes, not just shelters. Crops in small patches. Solar grids repurposed from scavenged enemy tech. There was laughter in the streets again, forced at first, but growing easier each day. and yet Cade felt none of it belonged to him. "You look like a man waiting for the sky to fall," Davin said one morning, sitting beside him on the old landing platform. "It usually does," Cade replied, sipping the bitter-root brew he'd somehow gotten used to. "You've been quiet since 014 left. You think they'll change their mind?" Cade shook his head. "Number Earth's done with us, for now. But that doesn't mean we're safe, not until I know why they backed off." "Isn't it obvious?" Davin asked. "You gave them a message. We're not a threat. But we can be." Cade stared ahead. "That would have earned a bigger gunship, not mercy." Davin raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you think it was?" Cade didn't answer, because he did have a theory, and it started with the sensor anomaly he found the night after the Earth vessel retreated. A spike. Underground. Faint, but repeating. Like a heartbeat. Not natural, not alien. Terran. He waited 5 more days before investigating. The signal came from beneath the old hydro supply station, one of the first structures built when the colony was established decades ago. It had been abandoned, marked unstable after a cave-in during the early Razak attacks. Cade moved alone. He entered through the broken frame, flashlight sweeping through mold and rust. The place reeked of stagnant water and silence. It didn't take long to find the hatch. Metal, reinforced, buried under old supply crates and mud. A key panel blinked once when he wiped it clean. The logo was unmistakable. EDC, Earth Defense Command. Cade stared. Why the hell would Earth install a secure sub-level on a forgotten colony? Unless it wasn't forgotten at all. He pressed his old agent ID to the panel. It clicked open. The ladder descended 20 meters. The air below was colder, controlled. The space artificial, sterile. A laboratory long abandoned but still intact. Dust lay thick on glass consoles and untouched lockers, but the power still pulsed. Low hums, like whispers waiting to be heard. Cade moved slowly, sweeping his light. Screens flickered on as he passed. Auto-reactive tech, high-grade, not civilian, definitely not something colonists ever had access to. He found the log terminal in the back, plugged in his override. Files flooded the screen. Project rendition, classified, authorized. Users, Cade 012, Tress 01, Solari 09. His blood ran cold. Rendition. It wasn't a code name. It was a warning. Earth hadn't abandoned the colony. They'd used it. For testing. Rendition was a covert sub-program, hidden under humanitarian migration efforts. It detailed forced relocation of genetically modified civilians, failed hybrid subjects, dumped onto fringe planets for natural observation. They weren't expected to survive. This colony had been one of them. Davin, the children, everyone. Not forgotten settlers. Genetic experiments. Cade staggered back from the console. He wanted to scream, break something. But all he could do was stare at the blinking file. They weren't weak because they were soft. They were weak because Earth made them that way. He confronted Davin that night, told him everything. The younger man sat in silence for a long time, staring into the fire. "Is that why we couldn't fight back? Why the Razak wiped us out so easily?" Cade nodded. "Your biology was tampered with. Lower aggression receptors, reduced adrenal response, suppressed risk processing. It was all engineered. You weren't meant to resist. You were meant to be studied." Davin laughed, but it was hollow. "And we thought we were just peaceful." "They lied," Cade said, "from the beginning." "Why didn't you tell the others?" "Because if they know, they'll turn on themselves. Question who they are, what they are. It'll fracture everything." Davin's voice hardened. "They deserve to know." "They deserve to live without another war. If Earth wanted them erased, they'd have done it already. But this is worse. They left a secret buried here and hoped no one would dig it up. And if they know you found it? Cade looked him dead in the eyes. Then they'll come back, with fire. The next morning, Cade sealed the lab, buried the entrance under concrete and crushed steel. He didn't destroy the data. He wasn't ready for that, but he hid it where even he might not find it again. Some truths were too dangerous to share, even among allies. But the silence weighed heavier now. The colonists sensed it. Cade felt it in their glances, the way conversations paused when he passed. He was no longer just the man who saved them. He was the man who knew something and wouldn't say. Davin kept his distance, respected the decision, but it gnawed at him. He wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops, but he also saw the children laughing, playing, smiling again, and he couldn't bring himself to take that away. So he said nothing. For now. But Earth had left them broken, and even though they survived, the fractures were still there. Weeks passed, then a new signal, weak, different, not from orbit, from another colony, another voice, male, older, rough. This is Sector 39K to any listening station. We survived. Razak gone. We've rebuilt. But we heard about Sector 41. We heard Earth sent someone. If he's still alive, tell him we're ready. We remember. We're not afraid anymore. Davin replayed the message 6 times before telling Cade. Cade stood in silence, eyes closed. Another one survived? Davin asked. Sounds like it. What now? Cade looked toward the stars. They think I'm dead. Earth? Number the other survivors. The fringe worlds. The forgotten. They think I died protecting this place. But if they knew I lived, they'd rise. Cade nodded. But if they rise, Davin said carefully, Earth will notice. They already have. And in a sealed chamber under Earth's capital, High Marshal Tress listened to the same message and smiled. Good, she whispered. Let them gather. Let them believe. Let them think one rogue agent can change the system. She turned to her aide. Activate Protocol Scorch. It's time we remind the Deathworlders who built them. The rebellion didn't begin with a rally cry. It began with whispers, quiet messages bouncing across old satellite channels, intercepted and passed through outlaw traders, coded inside outdated weather transmissions. Survivors, spread across forsaken colonies, were waking up. Cade didn't start it, but he became the name on every lip. They called him the Dead One Who Returned, a man who disobeyed Earth and lived to tell about it. His image, gritty, grainy, probably stolen from old military logs, was etched onto walls, embedded in messages, tattooed onto rebel arms. Not a hero? A symbol. Davin played them for Cade. Some were garbled, others barely coherent, but the theme was always the same. We thought we were alone. You proved we're not. We want to fight. Each one was a knife. Cade had never wanted followers. He'd only wanted to do the right thing once in a life built on wrongness. Davin approached him one night near the southern irrigation lines, where Cade worked quietly alone, hands covered in grease and sweat. No rifle, no armor, just a man maintaining pipes. More messages, Davin said softly. I don't want to hear them. You have to. I don't, Cade snapped. Davin didn't flinch. They believe in you. They shouldn't. I'm not a leader. Neither was I, until you showed me how. Cade exhaled hard, wiping his hands on his shirt. What do they want? To organize, connect, coordinate defenses. Some want to build outposts, some want to strike back. That's a suicide wish. Earth doesn't tolerate insurgents. They'll erase whole sectors. Then they die anyway, but at least they die standing. Cade closed his eyes. He could still hear the screams from the Razak raid, still smell burning flesh, still feel the warmth of the blood on his hands as he pulled colonists out of rubble. And now Earth was coming with a colder hand. A cleaner kill. Half a galaxy away, in Earth's high command citadel buried beneath Europa's black ice, Protocol Scorch was approved without ceremony. It didn't require fanfare. Only consent. Tress stood before a wall of holograms, maps, coordinates, movement pings, every known survivor colony marked in pulsing red. Above them, Cade's face, a broken line through it. Deceased, per military records, but she knew better. She watched as Section Lead Solari briefed the operators. Scorch is not traditional warfare. It's reclamation through devastation. No negotiations, no prisoners. We remove the infection. Infection? An officer asked. Solari nodded. A former agent's betrayal has become contagious. Before it spreads, we burn the field. The first strike came fast. Sector 49B, a water-rich moon colony known for hydro farming and isolation. No warning, no demands. Orbital fusion rods reduced it to vapor. 4,000 gone. A message sent. Not to the rebels. To Cade. He saw the footage 2 days later. Davin handed it to him without a word. Cade watched it alone. No sound, just silent devastation. A before and after satellite view. Life, then obliteration. He didn't cry. He just sat on the edge of his bed with bloodless knuckles, staring at the floor, trying to breathe through a fire in his chest that wouldn't go out. That night, he stood before the colonists, all of them. He didn't ask for attention. He didn't raise his voice. He just spoke. They killed Sector 49. The silence grew thick. 4,000 people, he continued, gone, because they spoke, because they believed we could live without chains. Someone gasped. Another wept. They won't stop, Cade said. This wasn't punishment, it was a lesson. And we're all next. Davin stepped beside him. So what do we do? Cade looked out at the faces, some hardened, some broken, survivors of one slaughter, about to walk into another. We stop waiting to die, Cade said. We prepare. Over the next week, the colony transformed, not into a fortress, into a command post, a nerve center for a movement too angry to stay underground. Outposts connected via encrypted channels. Disguised relay satellites were launched under old mining permits. Former scavengers were trained into infiltration squads. And from the ruins of enemy tech, they built something Earth hadn't prepared for. A communications system capable of reaching every blacklisted zone in the outer ring. They called it the Beacon. And when it went live, the message was simple. You are not forgotten. Earth betrayed you. But we remember. This is not rebellion. This is reclamation. Tress watched the message from her command suite. She didn't flinch. Activate secondary phase, she said. Targets? Her aide asked. All major satellite nodes. We blind them first, then we kill them in the dark. Shall I mark Cade's sector? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Burn 41 inches. The message came through scrambled static. Davin heard it first. Enemy fusion craft inbound, ETA? Then silence. He sprinted across the compound, found Cade already checking the sky. You heard? Cade nodded. They're coming. How long? 2 hours. Davin was trembling. Can we stop them? Cade looked at him. No. Then what? We evacuate. Davin blinked. But we're not winning this battle. We survive it. Then we make sure they pay. But the kids, I've already got them moving. Underground tunnels. South Ridge, I built them for this. Davin exhaled, heart pounding. How many can we save? Maybe half. That's enough. Enough for what? Cade finally smiled. For vengeance. They moved fast. No time for goodbyes. No time for sentiment. only action. Women loaded data cores onto sleds. Men carried weapons, food, wounded. Children clutched each other in terrified silence. Cade led the convoy through a narrow cavern entrance hidden by dense brush. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would get them far enough. He set the charges himself. Once they were through, he turned back. Davin grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" "Finishing it." "You're not coming?" Cade shook his head. "I started this war. It ends with me." "Bullshit," Davin snapped. "You told me this wasn't about dying, that we fight to live. And someone's got to make sure they don't follow." Davin's jaw tightened. "Then I stay." "You're their voice now, Davin. They believe in me because you believed in me. That's your burden now." "Cade, go." Their eyes locked. Then Davin turned, disappeared into the tunnel. Cade stood alone. The wind shifted. He looked to the sky. The first lights appeared above the clouds, blue streaks cutting through the atmosphere like surgical blades. He smiled and raised his middle finger to the heavens. In orbit, the fusion strike was armed, target locked, launch authorized. But just before ignition, Beacon Node Alpha sent out a final signal. Not from Cade, from everywhere else, every rebel node, every hidden outpost, every colony still breathing. They jammed Earth's frequency, overloaded the targeting systems. The strike faltered, redirected, exploded mid-air. The fire never touched the ground. When the dust cleared, Cade emerged from the edge of the ridge, covered in soot and ash, grinning through cracked lips. The beacon had saved them. But Earth would come again. Harder. Smarter. So now they had to be more than just rebels. They had to become legends. The news of the failed fusion strike swept across the fringe systems like wildfire. Earth had aimed its most terrifying weapon at Sector 41, and missed. Not by accident, by force. Every outpost that had stayed quiet, waiting, unsure, now surged to life. Systems long thought to be abandoned began transmitting again. Underground cells, legacy survival units, even forgotten military remnants, all declaring themselves open participants in what was no longer a rebellion. It was a reckoning, and at the center of it stood Cade. He hadn't wanted the crown they placed on him. It wasn't gold. It was carved from blood, scorched metal, and the screams of those who died in silence. He didn't wear it with pride. He wore it because no one else would. The surviving half of Sector 41's colony had resettled near the ridge. The underground tunnels extended into a cavern network that had once served as a Razak escape system. Narrow, unstable, but deep and hidden. Cade turned the ruins into a command post. Davin returned with new fire in his eyes. "I've got 2 old mining colonies pledging arms and tech. Another in Sector 43 wants you to visit. They're calling it a summit." Cade grimaced. "I don't do speeches." "You don't need to. You just need to stand there and be you. That's enough." "I'm not a leader." Davin looked at him like he was tired of repeating himself. "You're not. You're a symbol. That's louder." Cade said nothing. But in the quiet corners of his mind, something twisted. Not fear, not pride. Responsibility. The summit was held in a hollowed-out asteroid station orbiting a dead moon. It had been a mining facility once. Now, it hosted a crowd of over 500 delegates from across the black zones. Many wore patchwork uniforms. Some bore scars from fusion burns. Others carried children in their arms. There were ex-military, former engineers, hackers, farmers, and more. All had one thing in common. They had been forgotten by Earth. And they weren't going to stay quiet anymore. Davin spoke first, laying out communications infrastructure, proposed trade routes, mutual defense networks. He was sharp, eloquent, and practical. Then they asked for Cade. The room fell silent as he stepped onto the cracked stage, lit only by flickering generator lights. He didn't prepare a speech. He just looked out at them and said, "I was trained to kill you. I was trained to erase your names from history. Earth made me into a weapon. I'm here because I decided not to pull the trigger." He paused. "I don't want your loyalty. I don't want your worship. I just want to live in a galaxy where we're not hunted for trying to be human." Then he added, "And if Earth doesn't want to give us that freedom, then we'll take it." No thunderous applause, just quiet nods. That kind of silence meant more. Meanwhile, Earth changed its strategy. Tress stood before the Security Council, her face colder than ever. "The mistake wasn't killing them. It was letting them die in isolation. We gave them time to unite. Now they believe they're equals." One senator spoke up. "They aren't?" Tress didn't blink. "They're worse. They've tasted freedom." A murmur. "Then what do you propose?" another asked. Tress turned to a screen, pulling up a classified file marked Phoenix Ash. "This is our final move." The document revealed the unthinkable, reconditioned Deathworlder clones, not bred for war, but reborn for eradication, genetically engineered to survive anything. No code, no loyalty, no conscience. Tress said, "They aren't soldiers, they're extinction weapons." "They'll kill everyone," someone whispered. "That's the point." Back at the Ridge compound, Cade ran drills with the new militia. He trained them like Earth once trained him. Except now, every rule was different. He taught strategy through intuition, combat through necessity, morality through scars. They didn't need to win. They just needed to never be broken again. That night, Davin approached him with a message tablet. "It's from Sector 29. Cade opened it. The screen showed a young girl, 12, maybe 13, sitting in a burned-out hab pod. She had no legs. She spoke directly to Cade. "You don't know me, but my dad said you fought for people like us. He said you showed the galaxy we don't have to be afraid anymore. They're saying Earth's coming with monsters. I'm not scared. Because monsters bleed too. You taught us that." Cade didn't move for a long time after the message ended. He just stared at the ceiling, letting the silence crack something in him he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 3 days later, Earth struck again. But this time, it wasn't a colony. It was a fleet. 3 battlecruisers dropped into Black Zone space, fully loaded, each carrying an Ash unit. And one message: "Deliver Cade 012 alive, or we begin erasing systems." No timeline, no second chance. The first ship hovered above Sector 43, waiting. The second positioned itself above a known beacon relay point. The third vanished, destination unknown. The entire resistance froze. Panic spread. "What do we do?" Davin asked. Cade said nothing for several seconds. Then, "We split them." "How?" "Make them think I'm in 2 places at once, then hit the third while they blink." "That's insane." "That's how we win." Within hours, Cade deployed decoys, cloned voice files, decimated DNA trails, false beacon messages. Everything he'd ever learned as an infiltrator, he turned against the ones who made him. Sector 43 sent up a hollow ship, packed with dead metal and encrypted logs pointing to a non-existent rebel base. The Second Fleet intercepted it, wasted time and fuel. Meanwhile, Davin led a stealth strike on the beacon relay point, sacrificing the node but planting a feedback virus that fried half the enemy's systems. The Third Fleet? Never arrived, because it had been rerouted to Sector 29, where the girl with no legs waited. She wasn't alone. 27 militia squads stood armed and ready. When the Ash unit descended, they detonated the surface beneath it, burying the creature in molten rock before it could even scream. They weren't soldiers, but they were Deathworlders now. When Cade heard the battle report, He didn't smile. He just whispered, "She wasn't scared." But Earth wasn't finished. Tress prepared her final broadcast. She stood before a live feed, the eyes of the controlled systems watching. "This rebellion ends now. The man you follow is a relic of failure. He taught you to disobey. He gave you pride. We will erase it." She paused, then added with venom, "You don't need salvation. You need extinction." Then she activated the Ash Protocol. All units, all at once, across every known sector. The purge had begun. And in the shadows, Cade stared at the blinking red dots on his map. Each one a kill zone, each one a home. He turned to Davin. "Ready the fleet. We take the fight to Earth." "Now?" "No," Cade said. "Now we finish what they started." The fleet wasn't polished. It wasn't beautiful. It was stitched together from old mining rigs, gutted freighters, retrofitted cargo carriers. Half of them shouldn't have flown. But the people flying them had survived extermination orders, fusion storms, and genetic erasure. They weren't fighting for glory. They were fighting because Earth left them no other choice. Cade stood aboard the Widow's End, a converted drop cruiser that once belonged to the Rajak. Now it bore a crude Deathworlder sigil across its hull, jagged, raw, unmistakable. He looked out at the blackness of space ahead. Earth's defense grid glittered in the distance like teeth behind a liar's smile. Behind him, Davin entered, armored and grim. "The outer relay is down. They know we're coming." "They've known since we launched," Cade muttered. "You think they're scared?" Cade exhaled. "Number. But they should be." Back on Earth, the High Marshal prepared her final defense. Tress watched the rebel fleet approach through a secured dome beneath the Antarctic Shield, the most fortified military control hub in Terran history. Advisors begged for restraint. "Open negotiations. Offer amnesty. Spare the children." Tress raised one hand, and silence fell. "They want to be remembered as heroes," she said. "Let them die thinking they mattered." A young officer whispered, "And if they don't die?" Tress turned slowly, her eyes two pinpoints of disdain. "Then we become them." Cade's fleet punched through Earth's outer defenses harder than anyone predicted. The Ash units deployed in space were overwhelmed by tactics no one from Earth's high command had considered, because they weren't in the manuals. Human shields? Earth would never. Using decompression to create launch slingshots? Too risky. Volunteers detonating in boarding pods to open hangars? Unthinkable. But this wasn't Earth's army. This was the death rattle of the forgotten, and they wanted to be heard. Cade didn't lead from behind. He boarded the central satellite array himself, carving through Ash guards with a brutality that wasn't rage. It was reclamation. Every blow, every shot was a name. A child lost, a mother burned, a colony vaporized. By the time he reached the core, he wasn't Cade, the ex-agent. He was Cade the Reckoner. Meanwhile, Davin led the infiltration of Europa's citadel. They breached the black ice shield using stolen thermal drills and tunneled straight into Earth's command nerve. No mercy, no speeches, just cold, calculated rebellion. They stormed the chamber just as Tress activated the planetary purge codes. She never reached the final key. Davin shot her through the hand. She screamed, but didn't fall. "You think you're heroes," she hissed, clutching her bleeding hand. "You think you changed something?" Davin leveled his rifle at her head. "Number, we just finally answered back." She closed her eyes. "Then finish it." Davin hesitated, then lowered the gun. "Earth doesn't need another ghost," he said. "It needs a trial." Above, in orbit, Cade triggered the signal. The beacon's final message was broadcast to every system. Black zone, core worlds, neutral planets. A recording. His face, raw and unshaved, his voice like gravel. I'm not here to ask for peace. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to say we survived. You called us dangerous. You called us unstable. You called us expendable. But we are humanity. The part you threw away and prayed would stay silent. He looked down. I won't tell you what to believe. Only this. Earth does not own the stars anymore. Then the screen cut to black, and across the galaxy the signal echoed. Earth didn't fall in fire. It fell in silence. The moment Cade's message aired, over a dozen colonies cut ties with the core. Core worlds themselves protested. Soldiers mutinied. Factories shut down. Students poured into streets demanding transparency, freedom, justice. Tress was removed. Tried. Sentenced. The government fractured. No official surrender was ever issued because there was no one left to give it. 2 months later, Cade sat alone on the surface of Sector 41. The Ridge compound was being rebuilt again, this time with stone and steel. Not because they feared another attack, because they planned to last. Davin found him sitting on the same ridge where it all began. They want you in the council, Davin said. No. They want you to lead. I'm not a politician. You're a myth, Cade. You stopped a war. Cade stared at the horizon. I started one. And you finished it. Cade turned. What about you? Davin smiled. I'm not the symbol. I'm just the voice. Cade chuckled, standing. That's the same thing now. They walked back toward the rising city. Behind them, children played in the dirt, unwatched, unafraid. Ahead, the wind carried the scent of metal, dust, and something new. Hope. In time, the stars would forget the names of battles. Systems would change flags. People would be born who never heard of Earth's reign. But somewhere, whispered between Deathworlders and drifters, old miners and children who grew up free, one truth would always be told. Sending an SOS to Earth came with a price. But the Deathworlders paid it, and made the stars theirs.